Thank you all for joining today. As I mentioned, my name is Diana Vasquez. I'm the BERDO Review Board Manager. I will be leading us in a vote for acting chair. Does anyone on the BERDO Review Board want to make a nomination for acting chair today?
Nominate Steve Ellis.
Awesome. Thank you, Board Member Nelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Great. Thank you. I will now lead us in a vote. How do you vote for the motion to nominate Board Member Ellis to serve as acting chair? Board Member Boatright, we usually say either in favor or opposed.
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
Hi, everyone.
Was that in favor?
In favor. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Board Member Ellis.
In favor.
Board Member Faruqi.
In favor.
Board Member Ferris.
In favor.
Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
And Board Member Stovall.
I don't even know. This is, like I said, I don't even know anybody. So seeing as everybody's unanimous, I will go in favor this one time.
Awesome. Thank you. I will now hand the meeting over to acting chair
You
Ellis.
may
forgot
have
my
skipped
vote.
board member
Yes,
Lattimore.
my vote.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Board Member Lattimore.
In favor.
Thank you. I will now hand the meeting over to acting chair Ellis.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. I am calling this public meeting to order at 4:36 p.m. in accordance with the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance regulations adopted pursuant to the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Section 7-2.2. The BERDO Review Board will hold a virtual public meeting at 4:30 on March 10th to review the following topics in regard to the reduction of greenhouse gases from building energy production and consumption so as to promote the public health and welfare of Boston residents. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this public meeting online. To ensure public access to deliberations of the BERDO Review Board, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 or send your questions to staff via email at berdoreviewboard@boston.gov. For the record, my name is Stephen Ellis, and I am the acting chair of the board. Before we start the roll call, I would first like to welcome 3 new board members to the review board. So first, welcome Jessica Boatright, Lori Ferris, and Reggie Stovall.
Thank you.
I will now conduct a roll call of board members. Board members, please say your name in the order that they appear on the slide.
Jessica Boatright.
I will come back to the counselor. Stephen Ellis,
Hassan Faruqi.
Lori Ferris.
Gail Lattimore.
Jack Nelson.
Reginald Stovall.
Stover. And counselor, are you still with us? All right, we'll check in with her again momentarily. Staff will now introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Hannah Payne, Director of Carbon Neutrality in the City of Boston's Environment Department.
Hi, everyone. Diana Vasquez, the BERDO Review Board Manager in the Environment Department.
Hi, Ziggy Chen, BERDO Review Board Assistant in the Environment Department.
Thank you. Here is the agenda for today's meeting. We are going to start with voting on 9 building portfolios. We have quite a few. Next, we will have a discussion, then vote on opening the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund for the 2025 application cycle. After, we will approve the meeting minutes from the January 13th meeting, and then we will hear some administrative updates. Finally, we will adjourn the meeting. Starting off, we will hear some information about the building portfolio applications, then discuss and vote on those applications. Given the number of applications on today's agenda, I want to encourage board members to try to limit their questions to one question for the Pathway 1 applications. Speaking of Pathway 1 applications, I will turn it over to Diana and Ziggy.
Thank you, Chair. Since we have some new board members on the board, I want to give an overview of what building portfolios are and what Pathway 1 requirements are. So a building portfolio are a flexibility mechanism to allow owners of multiple buildings to comply with a single portfolio level emission standard. So if you have 5 buildings, you can put them all together and depending on their building uses, you have a blended emissions standard. And Pathway 1 requirements include that all buildings are individually subject to BERDO and do not trigger environmental justice requirements, and no hearing is required for this approval. So that means that all their buildings are in EJ populations, they have no CHPs, just very uniform throughout. And then so the options for voting are you can approve with standard conditions, or the board can continue discussing the application before they feel comfortable voting on the motion. And that could be at a next meeting or something like that. So for the first application, we have Codman Square NDC.
Okay, well, thank you for reminding us that, Ziggy. Before we start with Codman Square NDC, would any board member like to recuse themselves?
Yes, I will recuse myself as the Executive Director of Codman Square in DC.
All right, see you in a bit, Board Member Lattimore. Thank you.
Bye.
Back to you, Ziggy.
Great, thank you. So this application was submitted through Pathway 1. It includes 20 buildings in the neighborhood of Dorchester, and the applicant met all eligibility criteria, and application was deemed complete. These are the standard conditions that apply for Pathway 1. I'm just going to read them for our new board members. So timely compliance reporting and third-party verification requirements, timely compliance when the submission of satisfactory emission standard compliance plan if that is applicable to the application. And then the review board or its designee may inspect any building that's part of the approved building portfolio with reasonable notice just to assess the compliance with the terms and conditions of the building portfolio. And so this is part 1 of their buildings list. These are 10 buildings that they have. The second part, so 20 buildings in total. And so the building use types are all multifamily housing. And since they all have multifamily housing, their portfolio emission standard is the same as multifamily housing 4.1 for 2025, 2.4 for 2030, 1.8 for 2035, 1.1 for 2040, and 0.6 for 2045, and then of course 0 by 2050. And that is a quick overview of Codman Square NDC. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Ziggy. In the interest of time, any representatives for this application are welcome to introduce themselves in the chat by introducing their name and the organization that they are with. Review board members who would like to ask a question, I'm going to ask that you please raise your hand or use your raise hand function in the Zoom platform. I will pause to see if there are any questions regarding Codman Square's Pathway 1 building portfolio.
Sorry, I'm having trouble finding my hand.
That's all right. Board Member Boatwright, please go ahead.
Thank you, and appreciate the chance to ask a question. I have always really respected Codman Square a lot for your leadership in sustainability and in the area of carbon. So this is less of a question about the integrity of the application and just more of a curiosity. Are there any specific buildings where you're anticipating a need for additional funding along a particular timeline in order to meet the goals that you've set out in front of us today, or are most of these buildings already scheduled for whatever upgrades you're going to need to make?
Thank you. I can take that question. So we do have 2 sites where we've secured funding, firstly from the equitable funds from the city. And the second one, which is at Talbot Bernard Homes, we've secured funding from EP and the City of Boston for replacing the gas stoves and introducing induction stoves. So we've secured additional funding through these grants. But otherwise, we are looking at overall upgrades when it comes to energy efficiency and also installing solar PV arrays across our entire portfolio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Boatright, and thank you. Is it ready?
Yes.
Okay, not a problem. Just want to make sure I'm capturing your name appropriately. Are there any other questions from the board?
So when we take and okay the application, I just wanted to know one simple question. Who's going to make sure that all of these retrofits happen? Whose job is that?
Thank you, Board Member Stovall. Liddy, are you able to take that question?
Yes, and I will also invite Dominic, my colleague, to answer if required. So what we're doing is that we are scheduling these upgrades as part of our development pipeline. So that will make us accountable to ensure that as we line these up over the next 4 years, we are meeting the BERDO standards and the promises that we've made.
So in other words, we have to take your word for it? Is that what you're saying?
We are making sure that we are including the scope of work required in our pipeline. And we will report that as we keep doing the upgrades back to the city.
So the additional answer to that, sir, Dominic Butler, Wynn Residential, the managing agent for Codman Square. Every funder that we receive funds from has a not only a vetting process prior to the award of the funds, but also an inspection and a certification process after.
Okay.
Various ISD will have to sign off on many of these things. Depending upon where the funding source comes from, they may require inspections and certification documents that the work has been completed, and in many cases, photos of the work that's been completed. So they're the concern that the money may not be spent wisely is, I think, not a major concern due to the amount of inspections and certifications and then follow-on audits that we also have where these questions would come up.
If I may also add, good evening. My name is Marcel Thornhill. I'm Vice President of Operations at Common Square Neighborhood Development Corporation. In addition to what the property management side had just said, also on the real estate development side, some of these projects, not properties, not all of them, but some of them will be going through what they call a refi rehab process. And during that time, we try to look holistically at redeveloping the buildings. So there would be upgrades associated with meeting BERDO requirements incorporated into our redevelopment plans as well on some of these buildings.
Thank you, Marcia, Dominic,
You're
and
welcome.
Liddy for those. And thank you, Board Member Stovall again. Hannah, I see your hand up.
Yeah, if I may just jump in, Chair Ellis, to the question about how we hold portfolios accountable. So just for clarification for any of the new board members, when a portfolio is approved, all of the buildings that have to do their annual BERDO reporting will have that portfolio logged in our system, and the annual reporting for all of those buildings within the portfolio will need to demonstrate every year that they're staying under their portfolio limit. So all of the same enforcement mechanisms available through BERDO are available. So the city will also be checking up every year to make sure that that Codman Square and any other building portfolios are staying under their portfolio limit as approved by the review board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Are there any other questions from our board members before I ask if there's a motion? Is there a motion to approve Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corporation's application with standard conditions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to approve Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corporation application with standard condition, how do you vote? And the options are in favor, oppose, or abstained. So how do you vote, Board Member Boatright?
In favor.
I don't believe, okay, I do see her back. Counselor,
In favor.
Uh-oh, it may seem Chair Ellis may have wrote. We may have lost connection with Chair Ellis. Let's just double check. Oh, he may be rejoining. Apologies, everyone. 1 second. Let's give him a minute. Um, oh, I think we have lost connection with Chair Ellis, unfortunately. In that case,
Let's give him 1 more minute to rejoin and then we can, if we're still having trouble, we can determine what to do. But I think we should have a chair in the meeting. So
agreed.
bear with us. Thanks for your patience.
Apologies, everyone.
Diane, any word from him? Okay.
I just sent Board Member Ellis a quick text, so I'm gonna give him a chance to reply and see if he can rejoin. It seems he experienced a power glitch. That's what he's saying. I think he's planning on rejoining, but I wonder, Hannah, if we should have if we want to wait for him, or should we have like an interim chair?
Um, I think, can you try to confirm with him if his power is back or, because I think if it's gonna be a while, let's vote for a new interim chair. But if he's joining in like the next minute or so.
Sounds good.
Sorry, everyone.
Apologies for this transparent facilitation happening. Uh, Confirming with Stephen now.
Virtual meetings are a lot easier in many ways, and then also, deal with strange glitches like this, where you don't have someone just disappear from an in-person meeting. Diana, I'm wondering if we want to just vote for an interim chair if you haven't heard from him.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, I have like the three little dots. So, yes, he
You're
said,
seeing this in real time.
yes, sorry. He said go ahead and vote for an interim chair.
Okay.
So, uh, some transparent facilitation in the past. I know board member Faruqi has chaired as well. So just transparent. Board member Faruqi, would you be willing to serve as acting chair?
Yes, I'm happy to do so.
Okay. Could I have a motion from one of the board members
So
to,
moved.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. For those all board members in favor, can you either raise your hand or say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome. Thank you all for the quick pivot. I will now hand the meeting over to acting chair Faruqi.
Thank you so much, Diana. So we can pick up on the vote on Codman Square's application. So I'll just redo the motion. So on the motion to approve Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corporation's application with standard conditions, how do you vote, board member Boatright?
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata?
In favor?
I vote in favor. Board member Ferris?
In favor.
Board member Nelson?
In favor.
And board member Stovall?
In favor.
Excellent. All right, with
Oh,
that.
sorry, Chair. I think. Oh, just kidding. Board member Lattimore has recused herself. Never mind. Ignore me.
No, you're all good. You're all good. So with that, the motion passes. The ayes have it, and Codman Square NDC's building portfolio has been approved. And per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Next on our agenda is the application for the Children's Hospital. And so I will pass it back to the Environment Department to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chairman Faruqi. So the next one is the Children's Hospital. So this was also submitted through Pathway 1, and it is for 5 buildings in the neighborhood of Longwood Medical Area. The applicant met all eligibility criteria, and application was deemed complete, and these are the same standard conditions that apply for any building portfolio. So the building use types were healthcare, storage, and technology and science. And the way it was broken up for their calculated blended emission standard, 4 buildings had healthcare as their primary building use, and 1 building had technology science. And so their portfolio emission standard is 15.9, 10, 7.3, 4.8, 2.3, and then 0 for 2050. And that is all for the Children's Hospital.
Right. Thank you so much, Ziggy. Once again, any representatives of the application are welcome to introduce themselves in the chat, as I see some have already done. So thank you for that. And now we can turn it to our board. If anyone wishes to ask a question of the applicant, please raise your hand either virtually or in real life, and we can call on you. Okay, I'll go ahead and ask the first question to Brian, I believe. First of all, I also want to recognize that board member Lattimore has rejoined the meeting. So welcome back, board member Lattimore. And on the application for Boston, or for the Children's Hospital, I'll turn now to Brian. Thank you for submitting this. I'm curious if any of your buildings are powered by the medical area total energy plan or the MATEP plant, and if so, how many within this portfolio?
Yes, I believe all of them are.
Excellent. All right, thank you. And are there any conversations that you've been a part of that you're able to share here around the decarbonization process for that plant or compliance for those buildings in light of that?
Yeah, we're exploring all avenues currently in discussions with the plant. They're also, I think, in the very early stages of doing their own investigation. So we're kind of exploring all angles.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from any of the other board members?
I mean, what's the size of the what's the scope of work that you plan to get to that compliancy for the first block of years?
Well, we've entered into a virtual power purchase agreement that offsets 100% of our electricity. So that, depending on a lot of the negotiations we're still doing between the city and METEP plant, gets us through at least the first 5 or 10 years, maybe even further.
So are you going to do any retrofits to the buildings?
Yes, we're exploring all avenues.
So you don't have a definitive answer for me? Okay.
As far as our path to fully carbon zero,
Yes.
like I said, we're still in the very early stages of investigation, so we're still exploring many different avenues. Technology is changing basically on a daily basis, so you know, things that might have worked last year, now they're already more efficient this year and will be more efficient next year. So every day we get closer and closer.
Are there any other challenges that you envision with reaching net zero for this portfolio?
Well, one of our former directors used to say that operating a hospital is like flying a Boeing 777 and keeping it in the air 24/7, 365, while also being able to try and do all of these upgrades and things. So it's definitely a challenge. Just the 24/7 operations to be able to do upgrades on a lot of this stuff. We have a lot of redundant equipment, or N+1, N+2, so that we can do maintenance and repairs on, say, one air handler while another one picks up the slack, or runs in tandem or in its place. I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge. Space is also at a premium, especially in our little corner of the city.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for those. Are there any further questions from any of the board members?
So I just want to ask one more question and then I'm pretty much done. So you're going to purchase power from a greener plant? Is that what I'm understanding you said?
No, we've entered into a virtual power purchase agreement with many institutions across the city. Mass General Brigham, Harvard, MIT over in Cambridge, I believe the city of Cambridge, Boston Convention Center, just to name a few of them. So the way that works is that they are building solar and wind projects out in the Midwest. And as part of that project, we receive the renewable energy credits, the RECs, from the production of those.
That's what I just asked you. I asked you if you're purchasing it that way, and you just said no. Okay, I'm good.
Excellent. All right. Any further questions from anyone? Okay. If not, and I'm seeing none, is there a motion to approve the Children's Hospital application standard conditions?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. All right. On the motion to approve the Children's Hospital application with standard conditions, how do you vote? In favor, opposed, or abstain? Board member Boatright.
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
In favor.
Board member Ellis, I don't believe has rejoined, so
Yeah, I'm here in favor.
Oh, you're here. Oh, board member
Yep.
Ellis. All right. How do you vote?
In favor.
All right. Thank you. I vote in favor. Board member Ferris.
In favor.
Board member Lattimore.
In favor.
Board member Nelson.
In favor.
And Board Member Stovall.
I'm opposed to it.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And with that, the ayes have it and the motion passes. And the Children's Hospital building portfolio has been approved. Per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. And Brian, thank you for being here on behalf
Yes,
of the
thank you for your time.
You bet. All right. Our next application is the Stony Brook Condo Trust. I'll turn it back to you, Ziggy.
Thank you, Chairman Faruqi. All right, Stony Brook Condo Trust. It was submitted as well through Pathway 1 with 2 buildings in the neighborhood of West Roxbury. The applicant met all eligibility criteria and the application was deemed complete. Same standard conditions as other applications. The building uses were all multifamily housing, so the portfolio emission standard was the same as the default emission standard for multifamily housing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ziggy. Any representatives of the application should introduce themselves in the chat now. And any board members who wish to ask questions, please feel free to raise a hand physically or virtually. We'll call on you. All right, Board Member Ellis.
Yes, thank you, Board Member or Chair Faruqi for and apologies for that. But directly to Stony Brook, I'm just wondering, there's only 2 properties of the exact same type in this application, and I'm just wondering if someone can clarify, like, how will this benefit you all? Because it doesn't seem to be changing the existing structure of how you're reporting. And I'm not really sure how this flexibility measure is going to be helping you.
Yeah, hi, this is Dan Carlton from Carlton Energy Consulting. We're the BERDO service provider for this for Stony Brook. Apologies, I'm mobile right now, so I couldn't use the raise hand function of the chat to introduce myself. But basically, one of the buildings is exceeds its emissions limit pretty substantially, and the other building is below its limit. So this portfolio application is actually just a starting point for getting the 2 buildings together below its emissions. I mean, we are pursuing some energy conservation measures there, mainly a boiler control upgrade. We think, well, the root of this building being above its emissions limit is the gas consumption of 4925 Washington. And we think it's because of an outdated boiler control. And so this building is actually going to be undergoing a boiler control upgrade in the next couple of weeks to install a system that takes into account apartment temperatures when calculating heat load, just to make sure that you're keeping the tenants comfortable, but the building isn't consuming any more gas than what is necessary. So we think that between this portfolio application and the upgrades we're pursuing there, that we should be able to get these 2 buildings below their emissions limit.
Thank you, Daniel. That's helpful.
Is that the only thing that you're changing, or are you upgrading windows or anything like that?
We are looking to encouraging as many of the units to switch to BCCE, Boston Community Choice Electric, as possible. But we should have an idea of how much the building is saving on gas in the May timeframe. We think if we get it in within the next week or so, there should be a pretty noticeable savings for March and April. And then by that time, we'll know, we should have a much better idea of whether this measure alone can get the buildings below their limit. Regardless, we're going to be trying to convert as many units to Boston Community Choice Electric as possible. But then anything after that, we'll make that determination when we see just how much 4925 Washington is saving on gas.
Okay.
As a result of the boiler control upgrade.
Great. Board Member Ferris.
Thank you. In addition to, I guess, a timeline for new controls to respond to the boiler issue, is there a timeline for switching over the gas equipment to electric equipment?
That would probably come starting in the next cycle. We right now, the priority is getting the building's emissions below its limit for the current cycle. But yeah, we are looking at future cycles, and it seems it's apparent that the only realistic way they're going to be able to do that is just full on electrification of the heating system. So we've started that conversation. No concrete plans just yet, but we think to get to net zero, it's going to require electrification of the heating system. So that's something where we will continue to pursue with the board.
Thank you.
Board Member Lattimore.
Thank you. Yeah, I was pleased to hear the pursuit of Boston Community Choice Electric, and just wondered about the number, if there are any affordable units in the development, meaning subsidized or otherwise.
I don't know that, but I'd be happy to get back to you on that.
Thank you.
On that note, do you know more about the breakdown between rental units versus owner occupied units within the portfolio?
I don't. They're mostly owner occupied. But again, I take it would Ziggy be the best point of contact where I can get back to the answers to these questions? So far, it's the number of rent regulated and the proportion of owner occupied versus rental.
Sure. If you'd like to send sorry, Diana here for the Reviewer Manager. I can put an email in the chat for any follow-up you would like to do. It's BERDO Review Board at boston.gov. Multiple folks on the Environment Department receive any emails sent to that email.
Okay. Yeah, I should be able to get answers to those questions pretty quickly.
Excellent. Thank you. Beyond the challenges that you've articulated, are there any other challenges you foresee to net zero compliance?
Well, I guess it'll probably be financing for the conversion to an a full-on electrical heating system. And it would be for both buildings as well. Not to say it's not insurmountable. I think we can get there, but that's off the top of my head. I think that the most significant challenge will be to finance the conversion to an electrical heating system for both buildings.
Sure, sounds good. And you all are looking into Mass Save and how that can help with this?
We are, but I think yeah, at least for the current cycle, we think that a boiler control upgrade in Boston Community Choice Electric should be able to get the building below its emissions for the current cycle, but not those two probably will not be enough for future cycles. So we will be exploring all options available for the future cycles. It's that right now the priority is getting below its emissions for the current cycle.
Sure, of course, yeah. Thanks. Any further questions from any of the board members?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion on this application?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. On the motion to approve the Stony Brook Condo Trust's building portfolio application with standard conditions, how do you vote? In favor, opposed, or abstain? Board Member Boatright.
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
In favor?
Board Member Ellis.
In favor.
I vote in favor. Board Member Ferris.
In favor.
Board Member Lattimore.
In favor.
Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
Board Member Stovall.
In favor.
All right, great. The ayes have it. Motion passes and the Stony Brook Condo Trust's building portfolio has been approved. Per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you so much, and thank you, Dan, for being here with us.
Thank you all.
You bet. All right. Our next portfolio application is for the NB Development Group. Ziggy, back to you.
Thank you, Chairman Faruqi. Also submitted, this NB Development Group was also submitted through Pathway 1, and it's for 7 buildings in neighborhoods of Bryan and Alston. The applicant met all eligibility criteria, and the application was deemed complete, and the same standard conditions that apply to other building portfolios. So they have building use type of assembly, office, storage, retail, and technology and science. And on the next slide, I'll show you the breakdown per building with the primary use type. And again, 7 buildings. So this is their blended emission standard. They had 2 buildings with assembly, 2 buildings with office, 1 building with storage, and then 2 buildings with technology and science. So in total, their blended emission standard was 9.6 for 2025, 5.5 for 2030, 3.9 for 2035, 2.5 for 2040, 1.2 for 2045, and then 0 for 2050. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ziggy. Any representatives of the application should introduce themselves in the chat at this time. And if we have any questions from our board, please raise your hand virtually or physically. Board Member Stovall.
Yes, how do they propose to get to the numbers for the first block? Are they here?
Yes, okay, now I'm seeing yes. Emmett, can we pass this over to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So in terms of game plan to get to compliance, we have a high level plan at this point. It doesn't quite get super specific as we proceed into the later years of adherence to the emission standards, but primarily we'll be starting with tackling renewable energy supply and then transitioning to likely electrification of our heating infrastructure, which can then become dependent on our electricity, which will already be renewable at the time that conversion needs to take place.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Board Member Ferris.
Thanks. Since your portfolio represents quite a diverse set of typologies, I guess, and the blended emissions is really a blend in this case, I'm wondering if you can speak to how, are you tackling the technology, the higher emitter buildings differently than some of the lower emissions typologies, or do you have any kind of nuance to your approach based on what occupancy type the buildings function with?
Thanks for the question. I don't think our plan quite gets that specific at this point. We're really kind of at that high level, like I described earlier, with just the electricity first, electrification second plan. At this time, we don't really have a plan to tackle any of those primary use types first necessarily, but would certainly be open to feedback on the kind of the direction we head and what we choose to tackle first, especially when it comes to electrification.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Boatwright.
Yeah, it seems like I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the portfolio itself and whether the standards that you're reporting are standards as of today, or they're closer to standards you're trying to get to for 2029. What you're showing us is a really nice performance standard, but in some complicated buildings. So it'd be helpful to know a little bit more about the age of the buildings. And then that other question about, like, is this where you actually are, or is this where you want to be in 2029, and therefore, like, per the time range, you're sort of giving us a target.
So for the blended emissions standard, we proposed represents sort of the
I'm
I
also
guess
happy.
I would describe it as the, sorry, go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, sorry, I can chime in a little bit on the blended emission standard. So the blended emission standard comes from the BERDO regulations, and so it's proportionate to, I don't know if this answers your question, board member Boatright, but feel free to clarify. Let me clarify if it doesn't. Um, it's proportionate to the building use type to the gross floor area of the building portfolio. And so it sort of, takes into account the different building uses proportionate to the gross floor area of the buildings in the building portfolio. And so we sort of have a template that folks who apply for building portfolios use, and that's how their blended emission standard is calculated. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I guess I still have the question of like, it would be helpful to know a little bit more about the character and age of the buildings because it like the what you've submitted here looks like pretty smooth sailing. But I know that the day-to-day probably isn't like that given the diversity of your portfolio. So just a little more detail on that would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. I might pass that question to Keith if you're able to take that. I know we have a pretty diverse portfolio, so he might be able to provide some more context to the age and use like you're mentioning.
Hi, everybody. Keith Craig with NB Development Group. Would you be able to pull the slide up that has the list of the properties? Yeah, so all of the buildings, so 40 Guest Street, 6791 Guest Street, and 80 Guest Street, those are all, makes up Boston Landing. Those are new buildings. 40 Guest Street was completed in 2018, 67 to 91 completed in 2022, 80 Guest Street completed in 2017, I believe. And then the other buildings on the left side, 145 Newton, 223, 38, and 65, those are, much older buildings, kind of brick beam buildings, from, many decades old, and also much smaller buildings. For example, 65 North Beacon is a one-story, approximately, I think, maybe 13,000 square foot building. Whereas the Guest Street buildings are, these large mixed use complex new buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
When you say mixed use, are you like talking offices and storage areas and such? Or storefronts or?
So mixed use meaning, for example, the 67 to 91 Guest Street building is, 450,000 square feet, 5 stories, a mix of sports uses, retail, music, parking, storage, small manufacturing lab. So, extremely diverse and unique buildings, characteristic of Boston Landing.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. Not seeing any other hands up. So at this time, is there a motion to approve the application of NB Development Group with standard conditions?
Motion to approve.
Any seconds?
Second.
Great, thank you. On the motion to approve NB Development Group's application with standard conditions, how do you vote? Board Member Boatright.
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
In favor.
Board Member Ellis.
In favor.
I vote in favor. Board Member Ferris.
In favor.
Board Member Lattimore.
In favor.
Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
Board Member Stovall.
In favor.
All right, thank you. The ayes have it. The motion passes, and NB Development Group's building portfolio has been approved. And per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you to our applicants for being here as well.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Of course. Our next application is on Urban Edge Housing Corporation. I'll pass it back to Ziggy for more comments.
Thank you, Chairman Faruqi. Yep, Urban Edge Housing Corporation. So this was submitted as well through Pathway 1 and for 26 buildings in the neighborhood of Jamaica Plain. The applicant met all eligibility criteria and the application was deemed complete and has the same standard conditions as previous applications. So this is part 1 of their building portfolio list. It shows 13 of the 26 buildings. And then this is part 2 that has the second half. And for their use types is multifamily housing, assembly, and education. 25 of the buildings had multifamily housing as their primary use type, and one building had education, but their portfolio emission standard was very similar and pretty much the same as the default for multifamily housing. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I see Riddy has introduced herself on behalf of the application. And if there are any board members who have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. And if we have, if you have one question, that'd be ideal in the interest of time. We can also continue applications to future meetings or call for a hearing on some of the applications if that's what needs to happen. But floor is open. 2 questions.
Sorry, Chair, sorry, just one quick clarification. So the board cannot request a hearing for Pathway 1 application, so just wanted to clarify. But for Pathway 2 and 3, yes.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. So this is Pathway 1 for everyone's context, and this is an application we cannot call a hearing for. And I think I heard Board Member Stovall, you were starting to ask a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to know how we're gonna get there. How are they gonna get there? That's all. If they have somebody to explain what they're going to do, that's it.
Yes. So again, these are all affordable housing development. And what we are doing right now is that we are undertaking renovation and energy upgrades. So for a few of the buildings that we've identified is like Eggleston Crossing, we've submitted a lien application for boiler replacement. For Westminster Court, we've also applied for lien funding. And this is going to be boiler replacement as well as energy upgrades, which is going to focus on LED lighting, on air tightening for the entire building envelope, as well as installation of Wi-Fi thermostats. And a similar approach for Wardman building as well as Howardale. So we are leveraging the lien application wherever possible to go for boiler replacements and energy efficiency upgrades.
Thank you.
Board Member Lattimore.
Thank you. I wonder if any of your energy efficiency work is reliant on any of the federal tax credits or federal energy efficiency funding, IRA funding. Just curious.
The ones that we identified right now, they don't rely on EPA funding or IRA funding. This is all relying on lien funding from the state.
Thank you.
I'll ask a question here. What other challenges do you anticipate with the net zero compliance for this portfolio?
I think as identified correctly, if we are going to be relying on federal funding in the future, we might face problems. But for now, we don't see that. And also the cost of energy upgrades that might create certain issues in the future. So we might require additional funding from the city.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions from any of the board members? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the portfolio application for Urban Edge Housing Corporation with standard conditions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. On the motion to approve Urban Edge Housing Corporation's application with standard conditions, how do you vote, Board Member Boatright?
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata?
In favor.
Board Member Ellis?
In favor.
I vote in favor. Board Member Ferris?
In favor.
Board Member Lattimore?
In favor.
Board Member Nelson?
Favor.
And Board Member Stovall?
In favor.
Great. The ayes have it. The motion passes and Urban Edge Housing Corporation's building portfolio has been approved. And further regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you, Riddhi, once again for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, our next portfolio application is for Win Companies. Ziggy, I will turn it back to you.
Chair, I will actually review this to give Ziggy a little break from the applications. So I will summarize Win Company's building portfolio application. Similarly to the previous application, this one was submitted through Pathway 1. It includes 7 buildings in the neighborhood of Dorchester, Brighton, Mission Hill, East Boston, and the South End. I believe Riddhi also represents Win Companies, so perfect sequence. And then the applicant did meet all eligibility criteria, and the application was deemed complete. And then similarly, the standard conditions would apply should the review board vote in favor. So this is part 1 of Win Company's building list, so 9 buildings here. And then 17 buildings here, so part 2, so BERDO ID and address. So it's mostly multi-family housing with a little bit of office. So again, the standard or the default standard for multifamily is 4.1. One building had a primary use of office, and so their blended emission standard very closely reflects or matches the standards for multifamily housing because most buildings are multifamily housing in this building portfolio. And I'll hand it back to you, Chair Faruqi.
Great, thank you so much, Diana. And since the applicant has already introduced themselves, we can open the floor to the board for any questions. I can start out. Riddhi, how do you and the applicant more broadly plan to sequence retrofits across properties, especially given that you have properties in a number of different neighborhoods for this?
Yes. So again, the owner has already planned to energy efficiency upgrades and renovation. And currently we have renovation going on at least 4 properties where we are leveraging the lean funding. And also we are aiming to get LEED certification, Energy Star certification wherever possible when we undertake a renovation. So this will be part of the overall development pipeline over the next 4 years.
Okay, got it. But in terms of future developments beyond the ones already in progress, do you have a methodology for how you're picking which ones go first?
I will let Dominic answer that.
That's good. Yes, Dominic, go ahead.
Hi, afternoon, everyone. So we don't have a specific methodology. It's a property by property approach. I would say that, obviously, new construction is not something we're considering it not applicable here. And it depends on the size and the scale of the property. We do incorporate on all of our deals a large degree of energy efficiency projects. So I would state that it's inherent in what we're doing, in everything we're doing, but I can't speak to a specific methodology per property. We could talk about specific properties if you had one in mind.
Excellent. All right, thank you for the context. Yeah, I think briefly, I don't have any particular property in mind, but really I'm trying to understand if there's how we're sequencing them across different neighborhoods, given the existing air pollution that might already happen in those neighborhoods from other circumstances. So if you have any other context on that, feel free to share. If not, we can turn it over to the next one.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have any more I can add at this time.
That's okay. All right. Thank you for the responses. I'll turn now to Board Member Boatright.
Yeah, similar to the question to the last applicant. Could you just let us know if there are any federal funds or other unawarded public funds that you're going to be relying on to achieve your goals?
So far in the list of the buildings that we've submitted, for one of them, which is Castle Square, we were looking to secure EPA funding. But that's going to depend now on the applications round opening up next year, in the coming year. So that is the only one that was relying on EPA funding for now. Otherwise, we are aiming at lean, at mass save program. And those are the two main sources that we are utilizing right now.
Thanks.
Board Member Lattimore.
Thank you. Just curious for those residential properties, which most of them are, is particularly the where the tenants pay their own electricity. Are the I guess what do you have a sense of the percentage and how and if Win is working with the tenants to if they pay their own electricity to encourage them to look at Boston Community Choice. I know that some of them are subsidized housing, so lean is a great source, but I assume some of them may not be, but maybe I'm wrong. So anyway, just curious about, percentage of the residential units that where the tenants pay their own electricity, and if there's a marketing of the Boston Community Choice, if that's applicable.
I am not aware of the percentage of the tenants paying their own bills, but I can get back on that. Dominic, do you want to respond to the other question around the promotion of the Boston Choice Electric program?
To the extent we are doing projects that are applicable, we have a large resident services component headed by Trevor Samios, and they do outreach on all of these programs and opportunities available to assist them in this process as we go forward with the renovations and the upgrades.
Thank you, Dominic.
Great, thank you. Any further questions from the board? Okay. I just wanted to ask as well, building off of Board Member Lattimore's question, can you speak to the breakdown between market rate and subsidized units that are in your portfolio? And I'm talking about residential units here.
So I don't have the exact breakdown, but I would say that majority of these are subsidized units, and we have a very small component of market rate units between all the 17 sites that we've submitted. But I can give back the the exact number.
Great, thank you, thank you. Is it the case that all of them are rental properties, or are there any owner-occupied units as well?
Majority are rental properties.
All right, great, thank you. All right, seeing no other questions from the board, is there a motion to approve the portfolio for Win companies with standard conditions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. On the motion to approve Win company's application with standard conditions, how do you vote, Board Member Boatright?
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata?
In favor.
Board Member Ellis?
In favor.
I vote in favor. Board Member Ferris?
In favor.
Board Member Lattimore?
In favor.
Board Member Nelson?
In favor.
Board Member Stovall?
In favor.
Right, the ayes have it. The motion passes and Win Company's building portfolio has been approved. Per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you once again to our applicants. All right, our next portfolio is for Madison Park Development Corporation. I will turn it back to Diana from the
Thank you, Chair Faruqi. So you see there's a little bit of a theme. So we have another affordable housing applicant, so Madison Park Development Corporation. Next slide, please. So they also submitted via Pathway 1. They are applying for 17 buildings in the neighborhoods of Roxbury and the Fenway area. The applicant meets all the eligibility criteria, and the application was deemed complete by Environment Department staff. And then similarly, these are the standard conditions that would apply. This is part 1 of their list of buildings, so their first 9 buildings, and then the remaining 8 buildings here. So all of their buildings in their proposed portfolio are multifamily housing, so their blended emission standard essentially reflects the multifamily housing emission standard. And I'll hand it back over to you, Chair Faruqi.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. Any representatives of the application should introduce themselves?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, rather, almost. Yeah. My name is Antonio Rodriguez. I'm the senior asset manager at Madison Park. I can answer any questions that you may have for the application.
Excellent. Thank you, Antonio. And as usual, we'll turn to our board members who can raise their hands, and we'll start with Board Member Lattimore.
Thank you. Same question to Antonio. Just wondered if there are any of your energy efficiency work is reliant on any federal funding.
Yeah, one project in particular, St. Botolph, which is the property on Massachusetts Avenue. We were awarded a GRP, but given the uncertainty of that funding, we don't know if we're going to be able to utilize that to do any of the efficiencies or any of the work related to the efficiency and the decarbonization.
Thank you. And well, I'll leave it at that. I know we're trying to limit it to one question, so I'll leave it at that for now.
Good. Thanks. We can circle back to you if you once we've had other board members. Any other questions from other board members?
Are there any, what are you gonna do? What's the biggest project you have in mind to get compliant? I'm always gonna ask that question.
No worries. I appreciate the question. So the biggest one is the one that was contingent on federal funding, if you will, in terms of like the highest emissions per property. But we have a few others that I'm working on with both New Ecology and Power Options for development of decarbonization plans and energy audits so that we can strategize on the best route for us to take to get zero over time. Does that answer your question, Reggie?
Not really, but okay.
So my priorities are
expense you're going to put out to make the retro. I mean, what are you doing for the retrofit?
So, I mean, standard work to some of our other CDCs. I mean, we're trying to electrify where we can. One property in particular could go full electrification. And then replacing appliances where Energy Star appliances, taking out, replacing previously low flow fixtures and toilets with newer, more water conserving units. Solar panels where applicable. I mean, most of our portfolio has solar panels already, so there's not too much opportunity there. And then continuing to make any adjustments to the building systems, the building management systems where applicable, where we have like centralized heating or cooling, where we can stand to do some upgrades in terms of the management to try to save everyone a little bit of money.
And these are mostly Section 8 or market rate, or
no, they're all affordable. They're all income restricted. There's a few like, the percentage is minimal to how much we have in terms of like market rate, because it's just our mission to primarily do affordable housing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One question I have on the building for which you were supposed to receive federal funds and may or may not at this point. Can you speak to any contingency plan that you may have or may be developing around that building?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the less ideal option would be to do a refinance, to try to support some of the work. I mean, preliminarily speaking, some of the estimates that we had for the scope wasn't going to be it wasn't going to be such a large scope that we couldn't support it through other means. So we may refinance or we may seek out a loan and whatever programs are available to us and recommended in the decarbonization plans as options or avenues to try to secure that funding or fill in gaps.
All right, thank you for answering that. Any further questions from any of the board members? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the application of the Madison Park Development Corporation with standard conditions?
I motion.
So moved. Oh, I'll second Reggie's motion.
Thank you. On the application for Madison Park Development Corporation with motion to approve Madison Park Development Corporation's application with standard conditions. How do you vote, Board Member Boatright?
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata?
In favor.
Board Member Ellis?
In favor.
I vote in favor. Board Member Ferris?
In favor.
Board Member Lattimore?
In favor.
Board Member Nelson?
In favor.
Board Member Stovall?
In favor.
All right, the ayes have it. The motion passes and Madison Park Development Corporation's building portfolio has been approved. Per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you, Antonio, for being here. All right. Next, we have our Pathway 2 applications. So I will turn it back to the Environment Department, I believe to Diana, for more context.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Faruqi. So we have 2 Pathway 2 applications tonight as well. Oop. I'm gonna go back one slide. Thank you. And so I just wanted to provide some context, because we have new board members today, about what Pathway 2 necessarily means. So for Pathway 2, the review board may vote to hold a hearing. So the review board what does that mean necessarily? So the review board invites the applicant to prepare slides and come to a future hearing and sort of summarize on their application if there were questions that were asked, or that the board would like answered in a presentation. You may vote to hold a hearing and have some of those questions asked. The applicant will then prepare that presentation, and any sort of responses that the board asks for. Because it's a hearing, the board will accept public comments also. So during hearings, the chair usually opens a public comment period in which any member of the public can submit a comment. And so for today, the review board may vote to approve with standard conditions, approve with special conditions if you decide to have a hearing, and then, or deny the application. And then just as a reminder, what we mean by special conditions. So these are conditions that are relevant sort of to the distribution of decarbonization benefits to environmental justice populations. I know we recently, Ziggy and I sent out what we're calling special condition guidelines. So also want to just quick reminder to review board members, if you haven't seen that yet, we're hoping it's helpful to kind of guide special conditions. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to Ziggy and I. But just a quick reminder on Pathway 2 applications. Great. And so our first Pathway 2 application comes from Wentworth Institute of Technology. So some background information, why Wentworth is submitting through Pathway 2. They're submitting through Pathway 2 because they have an on-site combined heat and power plant that uses non-renewable or CO2 emitting fuels, and buildings that is located in environmental justice population. They're applying for 26 buildings in the neighborhoods of Fenway and Mission Hill, and the applicant did meet all eligibility criteria, and the application was deemed complete. And just again, here are the standard conditions that would apply. This is part 1 of their buildings list. and part 2 of their buildings list. So their blended emissions is 10.1, but their building use types include college universities, of course, services and storage. So they had a shipping and receiving building and a storage building that I'm forgetting right now, but I'm sure Eden and Mike may have more information on. So most of their buildings have the college university emission standard, but one building had services and one building had storage. And so their blended is 10.1, 5.2, 3.8, 2.5, and 1.2. And then as just a quick reminder for pathway 2, we ask applicants to submit these maps. And so this is the environmental justice map. The little red pin is the combined heat and power plant, and then the blue-green pins are the remaining buildings. So this was the environmental justice map. This is the asthma prevalence map. This is the urban heat island intensity map. And then finally, this is the respiratory hazard index map. And I will now hand it over to Chair Fruki.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. I see our applicants have already introduced themselves in the chat. So thank you for doing so. And we'll now open the floor to questions from any of the board members. And this is pathway 2, so we can ask as many questions as you want, within reason. Board member Lattimore, go ahead.
Yes, I have a number of questions, but for the sake of time, I'll ask the one that I think is for me a higher priority, and that is how and if the surrounding community is engaged in Wentworth Institute's institutional master planning process and in understanding Wentworth's climate resiliency strategies, and do they have input into those? That's one question. As I read your EJ plan, I didn't see a lot there.
Hi, this is Debbie Shepard. I'm the sustainability consultant. I can take this one for the team if that works for everyone. So Gail, I was actually the sustainability consultant for the institutional master plan, so I can speak to that. The campus has a very strong relationship with its neighbors, and they, pride themselves on having lots of community engagement and a director of community engagement that has regular communications, recognizing that it's really centered in an environmental justice community. The Wentworth Task Force was involved very much in the institutional master planning process. It was a long process that involved many meetings. We actually invited them to the campus and had dinner with them one night to really just have the design team present everything and hear their concerns and respond to it. So I would say that they are pretty well versed, at least in the institutional master plan and the overarching goals there. As it pertains to climate and resiliency, we made a very concerted effort within the sustainability and resiliency chapter to address the broader needs of the community in terms of things like increasing green space, increasing connectivity across the campus so that there's better access to green spaces across, over by the Muddy River and the Southwest Corridor and kind of all those different places so that the campus becomes sort of more permeable to the broader community. Looking at increasing tree canopy. And then in terms of direct emissions, if you look at the institutional master plan, there's a fair number of older, less efficient buildings that are going to be torn down and replaced. As those buildings are replaced, they're subject to the net zero zoning requirements of the city. So those are all going to be all electric net zero. And that's really where we'll have our biggest impact in terms of reducing air pollution. And then there's other initiatives that we have underway as well. Hopefully that helps to answer that.
Somewhat. So who are the constituents on the Wentworth Task Force that you referenced?
Yeah, so a lot of them are the direct neighbors. I don't think Joanna Sena is on the call. She's the director of community engagement, but it includes representation, I believe, from the Mission Main Apartments, from a couple of other community groups that is, I don't have the list in front of me. I apologize because that's sort of her role to bring all of them to the table. If you give me a second, I can pull up the list. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I was particularly wondering about how, the folks that live in subsidized housing, which
Yes.
surround, yes, so
Yeah, so it's
that's,
like Ellis Taylor and Mission Main are probably the two biggest ones because they're, basically direct neighbors, and those are low-income housing that's adjacent to the campus, that Wentworth has a fair amount of conversation with those folks.
and is there any thing that came from those conversations with particularly the kind of low mod income subsidized housing tenants? Any ideas, thoughts, or key issues that they raised during that process? Just curious.
Yes,
And
there were a lot of questions and discussions with that group, not really focused on climate and resiliency so much. They were more curious about what projects were coming in, how big they were going to be, would that cause any sort of shadow or shade impacts, things like that. But not so much around climate and energy. I was there for those sessions and we did sort of present high level strategies to them, but they didn't have a lot of feedback on that.
thank you.
Yep.
Can I just ask a follow-up to that? Sort of, I'm out of order, but just, I guess it would be helpful to understand how much of like what's in the actual proposal that we're seeing today was in the strategic plan. Like how similar are those details?
So again, this is Debbie, sorry. They're pretty well integrated. So the institutional master plan, it has a lot of ambitious goals for new construction. So that, by default, when we're demolishing buildings that are part of this portfolio, they're going to be replaced with net zero, right? So we're going to be reducing the emissions associated with those buildings. In addition to that, we do have high-level strategies laid out within the master plan, which includes basically looking at energy efficiency first, because we've done a level 2 energy audit, bringing in an engineering firm just to try to identify what additional measures can happen within the existing buildings as is. Looking at electrifying the smaller buildings next, because those are more affordable essentially to do. Then starting to pivot to look at the bigger, more difficult buildings like a lab building, like the student center, and figuring out how those could potentially be decarbonized. And the real challenge there is those bigger buildings are sort of the anchor to the district energy system, which has the CHP associated with it. And anyone that's ever worked with campuses on energy knows that those are very capital intensive systems. And it takes a long time to develop the plans to decarbonize them, and everyone is working on it. So with this pathway, we have 2 years to develop an emission standard compliance plan, which will go into much more detail. I kind of just wanted to share the highlights of, an outline of the strategies that we're looking at right now. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you for the questions and the responses. Board Member Ferris.
Thank you. Hi, Debbie. Building off that last question, I'm curious I guess how you're thinking about how the campus is thinking about decarbonization from the central utility perspective, and what proportion of the emissions reductions will come in the near term versus the long term from addressing the central utility plant versus at the building by building level.
So I can take that question. I am currently undertaking a study for the main campus, which includes 13 buildings, but one of them is the plant, so we'll not count that one. But in the study, we're going to be looking into electrification of the boilers, a low temp heating system, purchase of green steam, and or a combination of those. Hopefully with my preference would be electric boilers, but the technology has to be there first. But that is, as Debbie mentioned, that is to eliminate that main steam district as far as gas boilers in the main plant. This study will also be looking at the cogeneration that exists in that main plant.
Thank you. And has the timing of the these potential conversions of the centralized equipment been taken into account when thinking about the building by building renovations?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I can ask some questions now. How many of the buildings in this portfolio are powered by or purchased electricity, at least, from the medical area total energy plant?
That's an easy one, none.
None.
Great. In terms of the immense amount of work that I'm sure you have to do, particularly on the retrofit and renovation side, does the institution have any labor standards that you impose upon either employees or contractors for this work?
Yes, I can take that one. So there is let me see if I can pull it up. There is a vendor diversity supplier policy that the campus approved several years ago. And since that time, that was back in 2019. And since then, I actually have a list of various construction firms, consultants, operations support staff that are certified MWBE, veteran-owned, women-owned. So it is definitely a criteria that's taken into account when they put projects out to bid, and they have a pretty good track record of actually following through on that.
Excellent. Thank you. Are you able to share, what percentage of the contractors you use have an MBE certification?
That is a question I have the list of providers. I don't have the dollar values next to them. So I'd have to follow up with the purchasing director to get that information, but I can look into it for you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm glad you guys have that list and track that. Are there particular standards for the work being done by these contractors? And I mean, specifically in terms of the wages, the safety standards, benefits, hours, et cetera.
So that's a piece I don't tend to get too involved in. Planning and construction would be able to answer that. I don't know, Mike, if you know. I'm sure there's a whole series of requirements there around safety and risk management.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that answer. I mean, I can give you an example on the last project the project is just about under completion here for the 600 Parker Street garage in Sports Field. I can tell you that, that project had 51% of Boston residents, 40% minority, and 12% women on that project specifically. And that, like I say, we're just about to finalize that.
Okay. Great. Well, that's good to hear. So I appreciate that. On the next part of my questions, I'm glad Board Member Lattimore brought up the institutional master plan, and I know that you've made certain commitments as institutions do in those plans. Can you confirm that you have either met or are on track to meet all of the commitments that you made in the institutional master plan?
So this is Debbie. I can't speak on behalf of the senior administration. I can tell you we were just sort of in the final stages of wrapping up the approvals for that. I was looking to see if it was even on the public website to see the latest version of it, and it isn't. But my understanding is at least, sort of the documentation that goes into that plan should be just about finalized. Beyond that, I would have to refer you to the, sort of the VP level on where things currently stand.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. My final question for right now is, I know that Wentworth is subject to the payment in lieu of taxes program, or certainly a participant in that. And I'm curious, of the commitments that you've made through the pilot program, if you have earmarked any specifically for climate action or more environmental justice more broadly.
Yeah, so I have a list from Joanna Sena that covers some of those contributions. I think it was just over 8 million last year. And it includes a whole series of things. So it depends on how you want to define that, right? So there's a fair bit of scholarships and early college programs, and The connection there is Wentworth is very strong in architecture, construction management, engineering, and all these fields that are really at the forefront of decarbonizing, and the faculty are teaching classes on it. There's a minor and a major in climate resiliency and building sciences. So I would say indirectly, yes, they're, training the pipeline that's going to help address some of these issues. Beyond that, I'm just looking and, there are things ranging from community cleanups to supporting the Strive program, which actually employs Boston Public Schools students who are not capable of receiving a diploma. It's a career pathway for them in facilities management and in recycling. So again, sort of not like direct emissions reduction, but it has an environmental benefit as well as a very strong social benefit, and has placed, I don't know, over 5,000 students in jobs over the years. So it's quite successful and in terms of its social benefits. In terms of climate benefits on the transportation side, the campus does provide an MBTA subsidy for Wentworth employees that actually allows them to ride the MBTA for free. So we're, always trying to reduce transportation emissions, which is probably the bigger source of local air pollution in the community at this point. And then lastly, they take care of the Evans Way Park on behalf of the city, which is one of those sort of, smaller respite areas that folks go to get shade in the sun. So a little bit more indirect. And then I guess the other thing that I would say is there's a pretty strong and active program for Wentworth students and co-ops to work with the broader community and high schools and local nonprofits on everything from figuring out how to do LED retrofits to redesigning spaces to improving green spaces. So I would say in a very hands-on way, the Wentworth community is trying to support that broader mission.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any other board members who have questions or comments on this?
I just wanted to say thank you for the green space, getting rid of some of the heat deserts. I did notice that in the plans, and I was very happy to see that personally.
Board Member Lattimore.
Yes, I wondered about you mentioned the gentleman mentioned the 600 Parker Street project almost being completed. And I saw that there were 47 EV parking spaces. And I just wondered, are those accessible to the broader community, or are those limited to or specifically targeting the Wentworth population in terms of access?
Yes, so I can answer that one for now. So the policy is under development. Obviously, faculty and staff will be using it, and
oops.
Debbie, we lost you.
Is it just me, or? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like we lost you. The policy on that is on, like I say, it's under works at the moment.
That we've had.
And there's charging stations for each of these 47 parking spaces.
Yes,
Correct.
yep, there's 47 ports, and then actually based on the city's policy, all of the other spaces are EV ready. So there's actually conduit under every single parking space so that in the future, as demand increases, more EV chargers can be installed.
Mm-hmm. And those are within, like, in a segregated area within the development, not not ground level, or where are they? I'm just curious. And you're saying the accessibility policy is under development, but right now it's primarily targeting the Wentworth student and other population. Is that what I'm hearing?
So right now the project is not fully open. The construction is just wrapping up, which is why the policy is not completely done as well. And for folks who aren't familiar with what that site looks like, it is an athletic field with below grade parking underneath it. So within that below grade parking is where the EV charging is. And the campus doesn't, they're not like a garage operator. So a lot of the conversation is how to manage that facility in a safe way and make sure that folks can get in and out and access it. And so that's part of the ongoing discussions.
Mm-hmm. And just to follow up on Chair Faruqi's comments about and my own about the institutional master plan, I would be interested in, getting access or a link to the institutional master plan. So if you could send that along, that would be helpful. And also appreciate, being able to get the stats on MBE utilization for the conversation with that Chair Faruqi had with you. So thank you.
Welcome.
Board Member Ferris.
Thank you. This isn't necessarily about compliance with the letter of BERDO, but since some part of the compliance plan seems to involve demolition of a large number of existing buildings, I guess I would encourage Wentworth to consider the impacts to air quality and the local environmental conditions associated with demolition and the removal of buildings. And I also wonder if you've thought about any opportunities to support the community through those activities, through deconstruction or through providing materials bank or anything along those lines.
Hi, Lori, this is Debbie again. Yes, so the campus has followed LEED equivalent standards since 2005. So baked into that, there's, construction indoor air quality management and construction waste management. And we actually have goals around C&D waste diversion. So within the institutional master plan, we were targeting a higher threshold of 90% diversion. So we are looking to, push the envelope as far as we can to try to minimize anything that would be going to landfill or incineration. And then beyond that, we've started to have some conversations with the Boston Building Resources Center because it's actually right down the street from the campus. So we have not, formally started a pilot program or anything to that effect, but we've started to have some conversations between them and planning and construction to see what might be salvaged from those spaces. And we actually had a co-op student this past summer look at one of the existing buildings on campus to try to come up with sort of a checklist that could be used for construction projects and to just, determine what are the sorts of things to look for and how to inform the contractors on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Two other questions on my end. Do you know what percentage of Wentworth students live on campus versus off campus?
I don't have the exact statistics. I want to say it's around half. And with the institutional master plan, there is, and part of one of the big strategies there was to try to increase the amount of on-campus housing so that it takes some of that strain off the surrounding neighborhood. So as that plan gets implemented, more housing will be available on campus for students.
Got it. And I take it there's no on-campus housing guarantee until the IMP is fully developed?
No, I believe there is a guarantee for freshmen. I don't know if it goes through sophomore year, but definitely freshman year.
I see. Okay, thank you. And then finally, just turning back to the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes program for just a second. You mentioned you had made somewhere about $8 million of contributions. Can you share, what percentage that is of the city's requested amount for the pilot program?
I don't have that level of detail. I'd have to ask Joanna, but I'm happy to follow up with her and I'm sure she could provide a breakdown for you.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments from any of the board members?
I have a procedural question. Has the board collectively used any standards in the past to decide what goes to a public hearing and what doesn't, or has it been a case-by-case determination?
Certainly, I can say I'll let Diana go first, but I'll say certainly like on both of the Pathway 2 applications that we've considered before, we have moved to a hearing.
Yes,
Okay, thanks.
happy to jump in. So it's sort of been on a case by case basis based on some of the questions that the board members ask. If there's sort of any follow up that the board members would like responses to, and maybe the applicant needs some time to research, those tend to be sort of the reasons why a hearing would happen.
Thanks.
Okay, well, given that, is there a motion to hold a hearing?
I would motion to approve based on the City of Boston's Environmental Department's recommendation.
I
Is there a
second.
second? All right, here, Board Member Stovall, second. All right, on the motion to approve the application of Wentworth Institute of Technology with standard conditions.
If I just might jump in with a clarification, per Jack's motion, I don't think the city of Boston didn't, we didn't have a staff recommendation on how to move on pathway 2, so I would say you're free to make a motion to approve, but just wanted to clarify that last piece.
But they did meet all of the requirements to approve.
They met all of the application requirements, correct? But so just to clarify, the difference is like for pathway 1, if they meet all of the requirements, we recommend the board approves. For pathway 2, we just notify the board whether all of the application requirements have been approved for pathway 2, and it's up to the board to decide whether to approve, deny, or request a hearing. So you're welcome to make a motion to approve. It's just
So
cutting
what I'm
off the last
hearing,
one.
just to follow Hannah, motion to approve the application as opposed to motion to approve based on the Environment Department's recommendation. Those are two different statements. So the
Yes.
first one is I make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, Chair, you're muted.
Apologies.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. On the motion to approve the application of Wentworth Institute of Technology with standard conditions, how do you vote, Board Member Boatright?
I guess I'm just, if we could have discussion about the motion for a minute. I know I heard Board Member Lattimore asked for at least one or two things with some follow-up information. That's the only specific one I was tracking, but I'm wondering if we're able to amend the motion to include standard conditions plus an update. I know there was a request for an update on their plans for MWBE participation. That's the one I remember, but I see that Gail is unmuted, so maybe I'm
Yeah,
forgetting another one.
following up with a link or information on the institutional master plan, the stats on MBE utilization. I think those were the two things that were discussed between myself and Chair Faruqi.
If I may, Acting Chair. I think it's totally acceptable for the board if they would like to make a motion to approve with standard conditions and with follow-up from Wentworth Institute of Technology regarding MWE hiring rates and the IMP.
And sorry, one additional thing was the clarity on the accessibility of the EV parking spaces.
Oh, yes, and accessibility of the EV parking. So I know that's a long motion, but essentially a motion to approve with standard conditions and with an update from Wentworth regarding accessibility to EV parking, and BWE hiring rates, and an IMP link.
I motion to approve Wentworth Institute of Technology's application with the not special conditions, with the additional request to have the IMP sent, the MWDB conditions, and the information regarding EV parking spaces.
Second that motion.
Thank you. Before we conduct a roll call, I just want to ask a point of inquiry to the staff. I know that one of our members of the public is raising a hand and may have a question or comment, and I know that's not typically allowed in the within the context of a Pathway 2 meeting. Is that correct? Is there any jurisdiction that I have to hear the member of the public, or should we direct that person to put their inquiry in the chat or send it to the email?
Yeah, as acting chair, you are welcome to accept public comments whenever you would like.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. All right, well, the chair now recognizes Allison Pultinas. I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly, and if you'd like to make any points here before we
Yeah,
vote.
hi. Thank you so much. I wasn't sure either whether you took public comment at this point, so that's that was part of my question. I wanted to hear more about the power plant and also the sequence of demolition related to all the buildings discussed in the master plan. So I don't know if that's part of your purview either, but I appreciated that question about deconstruction because I'm hoping the city can also be involved in a deconstruction process, helping at least figure out how to move property owners towards that because the building materials co-op on Terrace Street can't handle everything. That's a small time operation. So those are all my questions, but obviously you've already voted, so yeah.
No, just to clarify, we have not yet voted. We've made a motion, but the vote has not been made.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't understand about the presentation about the power plant and whether it's being deactivated or what the process is. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm happy to recognize the applicant again if you want to respond to the question.
Yeah, no, the power plant is not being deactivated. What I had mentioned is it is part of 13 buildings on the main campus. But as far as reporting, that is not, the square footage of that main plant is not taken into consideration.
And I guess I'll just reiterate what was said earlier, Allison, in case to help try to clarify it. So because there are so many buildings on campus and because the district energy system is a big capital intensive complex system, it's not a quick and easy thing for us to answer. We do sort of have our near-term path for how we're going to maintain compliance and stay below those thresholds. We know the campus is in good shape for several years, which will give us some time to plan those bigger, more capital-intensive potential changes that would happen to the power plant. But what we're looking at is the more cost-effective measures in the interim while that planning is ongoing. So we do know that there are some energy efficiency measures still lurking in the existing buildings. We've worked with the utilities since 2017 on efficiency. We actually have a meeting with them tomorrow because we meet with them every 6 weeks to try to look for efficiency projects. So that's where we go first, so we can take advantage of the mass save incentives. And then we're going to look at electrifying smaller buildings and then trying to figure out what to do with the bigger, more energy intensive buildings that are tied to that power plant. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you so much. I assume you've already talked about what buildings are served by the power plant, right?
We didn't lay it all out. We're not allowed to do slides for this level, but
okay.
Mike can list them off. It's mostly academic buildings and then a few of the residence halls.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Always great when we have members of the public here. So thank you for asking the question, Allison. And with that, I know Board Member Ellis has put a motion on the floor. So on the motion to approve the application of Wentworth Institute of Technology with standard condition and with a commitment of the institution to follow up with more information as requested by the board. Hopefully this is an accurate way of describing it. How do you vote? Board member Boatright.
In favor.
Thank you. Board member, I'm sorry, Councilor Coletta Zapata.
In favor.
Board member Ellis.
In favor.
I vote in favor. Board member Ferris.
In favor.
Board member Lattimore.
In favor.
Board member Nelson.
In favor.
Board member Stovall.
In favor.
All right, thank you. With that, the ayes have it, and the motion passes, and Wentworth Institute of Technology's building portfolio has been approved. Per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you all. Thank you to the applicants and our staff and board members for being flexible around this motion.
Yes, thank you. And we will follow up with Wentworth with the 3 items that were asked for follow-up. So no
Thank you
worries there.
very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. So the time is now 6:24 and we have this meeting scheduled for another 6 minutes. I want to ask, given the items still to come on the agenda, if board members are able to stay on until 7 p.m. If so, we can continue this meeting. If not, we'll have to continue the applications for a subsequent meeting. Can we just get a show of hands if people are able to stay on or willing to stay on until 7 as well?
I just want to let you know, I have to just change the devices. That's it.
A question, Chair, would we lose quorum just because I have to be at a neighborhood meeting at right at 6:45? I can stay on until then.
Great. Thanks, Counselor. Yeah, Diana, do you have a count of that?
So we need 5 for quorum, and we currently have 6. So if Counselor Coletta Zapata leaves, we should still have quorum.
I only have
Thank
till
you.
6:45.
Yeah, I can't go
Yep, same
past
here.
6:45.
All right. Then I think we can continue the meeting until 6:45, and then we can adjourn at that point and table anything to a subsequent meeting. Okay, thank you for your flexibility. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff to get to here. So with that, I will now recognize the Environment Department to introduce the Boston Medical Center application.
Thank you, Chair Faruqi. I will try to quickly go through BMC's application. So BMC's application was submitted via Pathway 2. It's submitted via Pathway 2 because it has an on-site combined heat and power plant. It's applying for 4 buildings in the neighborhoods of Roxbury and the South End, and the applicant meets all eligibility criteria, and the application was deemed complete. And again, the list of standard conditions. So the portfolio is for 4 buildings. 3 of the 4 are under the healthcare emission standard, and 1 building has a primary use of office, and so their blended emission standard is the last row on this table. It's a mix of mostly healthcare and 1 office building. And this is the environmental justice map. The little yellow arrow is the location of the combined heat and power plants, and then the 3 red pins are the 4 buildings. This is the asthma prevalence map, the respiratory hazard map, and then this is the urban heat island intensity map, which shows the locations of the buildings, and then the next slide will show the urban heat island intensity. We had to the image, we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we made it work. So this is the last map. And then I would hand it back over to you, Chair Faruqi.
Thank you so much, Diana. I see the applicant has introduced himself in the chat, so thank you. I'll turn over to the board now for questions. We'll start with Board Member Lattimore.
Thank you. I really just want to say that I find the EJ plan very much lacking in information. And so for me, that is an issue that I think calls for, as far as I'm concerned, a hearing. I can't vote in favor of that based on the lack of information in the EJ plan. So that's just want to comment on that. There's very little information to inform us.
Thank you. Board Member Ellis.
I second what Board Member Lattimore stated, and I just want to at least hear from the applicant if they have any intention or can share a little bit of information about what they would hope to include in a future hearing, because I would agree with what Board Member Lattimore asked, and then I have a follow-up question, so I'll pause there for a second.
Hi, good evening. This is Matthew Keith with Bridge Energy. I hear your feedback on the environmental justice plan. Could you illuminate as to what it was that you were looking for? Was this something that was part of the submission? I only recall a small paragraph for input. Was there something specific that you needed?
I think if you take a look at what I think the city provided some guidance on kind of the elements that, or the kind of things you may want to put in an EJ plan. And I found that there was very little information, and also, can refer it back to some of the plans that other organizations that are in Pathway 2 have submitted, which is all public information to get a better feel for it. But I found there was really no information. It was one, like 4 lines or so of, which didn't give any context for how, and if the institution has worked with the community in what ways, and how the community is impacted by any of the plans, or had input into any of the plans. So I think there's guidance that the city provides, if I'm not mistaken, on the contents of an EJ plan, and their examples from others.
This is Corey Pouliot. I don't think BMC will have any problem pulling together an environmental justice plan and portfolio and package that can be put together with complete information and details on all the programs and platforms we support and drive throughout the community.
Thank you, Corey. And as a follow-up question, pivoting for a second, I hear, given the location of your central heating plant and recognizing that, the hospital is a very high intensity energy user, I guess if this application was to be approved, and knowing that you have the immediate 2025 threshold approaching, will BMC be below that threshold with an approval of a building portfolio?
Yes, I feel strongly that we would be, by leveraging our positions with our community solar programs that we've invested heavily in over the last several years, in the improvements that we're doing around the campus with energy efficiency. We are currently looking, and brought up earlier, we're negotiating with Vicinity on their e-Steam program and working on that to look at portions of our portfolio that we would look to drive some of that steam through their program. So there's a lot of things that we're currently working on right now. We're currently evaluating a couple solar projects. We're looking to determine how those solar projects will play out, whether we would use those strictly for the RECs or we would roll them into our clean power prescription program that we're doing for the community as well. So we got to see how we can balance that as well. There's a lot of things going on right now. BMC has been a leader in the healthcare industry as well as in the city for environmental justice, as well as sustainability and social programs. So.
Thank you, Corey. And my last question is, pivoting to the central heating plants, are you able to share, or maybe in the hearing, we might be able to highlight this a little bit more, some information regarding the decarbonization of your central heating plant?
Yeah, so we are looking, as I mentioned, we do run our cogen plant, which does support and provides extra resiliency to our campus for our inpatient care areas for heating, as well as electrification. As we go through our phase 2 of our campus redevelopment plan, we are looking at bringing on new technologies of high energy efficiency through the use of ground source heat pumps, geothermal heat pump systems that we're looking to implement into these programs. We're looking at different technologies that we can use within our building automation systems and looking at technologies like AI to help go one step above where we are today with some of our energy curtailing and how we can cut and reduce some of our energy within the building. But unfortunately, our campus is growing. We are in the process of adding additional 80 patient beds, 5 operating rooms, and that's to better support the community. As you all know, Boston Medical Center is the largest safety net hospital in all of New England. We see over 1.2 million patient visits on our campus. We have the busiest emergency department in the city, 11th in the country. We have the busiest trauma center. We are constantly reinvesting and developing into our campus every single day. And we really understand the point. For every dollar I can save on energy, that's an extra dollar that I can invest back into our patient care for our community.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Board Member Ferris.
Thank you. I expect maybe we'll hear more about this next time, but given the space constraints or that you just mentioned, the fact that you're growing and adding space, I wonder if you foresee a need to empty out any of the currently occupied spaces in order to complete the energy transition or any of these upgrades, and if so, if you have any plans for how that swing space will work against the pressures you're facing for space currently.
Well, we're pretty heavily utilized the existing space that we have today. We're very limited. Most of our buildings have been renovated probably within the last 10 to 15 years. We do have one property left on the campus that we're looking at long term and how we can renovate that or maybe put something new in its position. We are working with our planners to figure out how we can better utilize the existing space that we've got. During our master plan that we went through over the last 10 years, we have shed a lot of space. We did sell off space to the state. We are trying to really intensify the space that we are using though today.
Thank you.
Any final questions from the board?
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to request a hearing, please.
Second.
All right, on the motion to request a hearing, how do you vote? In favor, abstain, or oppose? Board member Boatright.
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
In favor.
Board member Ellis.
In favor.
I also vote in favor. Board member Ferris.
In favor.
Board member Lattimore.
In favor.
Board member Nelson.
In favor.
Board member Stovall.
In favor.
Thank you. With that, the ayes have it, and the motion to request a hearing passes. And so we will, the applicant is invited to present on their portfolio application at a hearing at a future date, and we look forward to hearing from you then. And the Environment Department will reach out with follow-up details, and I'll direct all of our board members to follow up with the Environment Department staff with any additional questions that we would like to hear from the applicant. All right, thank you to our representatives from the application team for being here as well. And yeah, with that, we can move to the next item about the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund application cycle, and I will turn it back over to Environment Department staff. Diana?
Yeah, and seeing that we have about 7 minutes or 8 minutes left, I will just say at the top of the meeting, I'm totally happy to continue this topic to the following meeting, but happy to just do a very quick overview of the fund. So next slide. We are planning to open the second round of the fund. As folks may remember from our last application round, the board voted to release up to $750,000 with a preference to make multiple awards of around $250,000. With this new round, we wanted to take some time to ask the board if they had any priority areas that they would like to see. We sent a Google form trying to see if folks had any sort of priority areas. We're happy to send that again. I won't go through too much, but we did hear from board members that they thought there would be merit into allowing applicants from the previous round to roll over their application to this founding round. So we are also proposing that. Very quickly, next slide. So our timeline would be, our proposal is to open on Monday, March 31st and close the application on Friday, May 30th. So very similar to last year, eligible to nonprofit organizations, with the caveat that applicants from last year can roll over. And then the projects must include some sort of reduction in building emissions in Boston and benefits to environmental justice populations. And the next slide. So it'd be, again, very similar to last year, Google form as the application form. We make a grant announcement that outlines all of the requirements for the application and hopefully make awards of around $250,000 for a total of $750. And we would propose 2 information sessions in which potential or interested applicants could come and ask questions from the staff about eligibility and so forth. And then this would be the timeline. So again, close on May 30th, open on March 31st, and then allow the board to review and evaluate, and then ideally make awards or announce awards in August. So just very quickly, Chair, recognizing we have 5 minutes, happy to answer questions if we want, or happy to continue this conversation to the next scheduled meeting.
Great. Thank you, Diana. Yeah, just in the interest of time, I think it's probably more time sensitive that we approve the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. So if it's okay with you all on the staff, I'd love to move directly to a vote to approve the meeting minutes. So I will make a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes. This is from January 13th. Before doing so, I'd just love to open the floor to any questions or comments regarding the meeting minutes. Board Member Ellis.
Yes, very quickly, just wanted to double check because I know we met in January and we had requested a public hearing from Mass General Bringham's. I am just asking the city, are we still in the appropriate timeline for us to be able to? Okay, I see the thumbs up. Thank you.
I can provide a quick update. We did hear from MGB. We initially asked if they were available in March. They actually asked for a little bit more time, so tentatively we're probably happen in April.
Thank you.
All right.
Second
Board Member
motion.
Watt? Okay, thank you so much. Great. On the motion to approve the meeting minutes, board members may vote in favor, oppose, or abstain if they did not attend the last meeting. Those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please say aye or show your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Board members abstained, say abstained.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Board members opposed, say nay. Okay, I believe the ayes have it. And so the meeting minutes from the previous meeting are approved. Thank you all for doing so. Ziggy, how many administrative updates do you have? Is this a 3-minute conversation or should we continue the updates till the next meeting?
I'm just gonna give one quick update about the webinar, and then we can continue the administrative updates to the next meeting. Our next webinar is on this Wednesday on March 12th. It will cover the launch of 2025 BERDO reporting and emissions compliance season. Just want to flag that, and all administrative updates I'll give at the next meeting.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Are there any questions on the administrative updates that Ziggy just presented? Comments? Okay. Thank you all for the flexibility with changing around the agenda. And now if there is a motion to adjourn, hope to hear that.
So moved. So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. On the motion to adjourn the meeting, board members in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. The motion passes and the meeting is adjourned at 6:43 p.m. Thank you all for staying on.
Good night.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank
Take
you
care.
all.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.